Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is that of Tracey Wylde. We are going to Scotland. See you there. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! My apologies, first of all, for no upload last week. That was quite a week, wasn't it? Very sad news about Queenie. And then it ended with the Remembrance Day of September 11. It's all been a bit sombre. Oh, honestly, what is it with all the clicking bones and stuff? Is this just what happens as you get older? Anyhow, I missed you very much, and I am glad to be back up the shed. Let's crack on. This is the story of Tracey Wylde. She's 21 at the time of her death, and we are going to Scotland to November 1997. I think that was the year I left. No, I started secondary school. Yeah, mad. Tracey was a single mum. She lived in a housing estate called Bar Moloch. Rhymes with cheeky. She was described as fun-loving, but fiery, also fiery. She wasn't afraid to sort of say what she thought. Because of that, she did fall out with certain family members as well. So yeah, she definitely had a fiery nature to her. But she was a very upbeat person, despite many hardships and a less than kind of like conventional upbringing. She was a positive person. She was happy. She moved into her flat when she was 17 in Bar Moloch, and all I can think of is the rhyming word when I say that now. She moved there when she was 17 with her then boyfriend Scott, and shortly after that she fell pregnant. So she had a daughter when she was 18. Sadly, after the birth of her daughter, she started to, whether she had been taking drugs beforehand, I don't know, but she fell into harder drugs and addiction. So she became addicted to heroin. Scott would move out. This would all just prove too much for him. And in order to fund her habit and to live, she turned to prostitution. And at that point, her life began to spiral downwards. Paul and I always say that. You're either spiralling up or you're spiralling down. And it can change really quickly. This weekend, I spiraled down. More about that at the end. And then now I'm spiralling up. However, at the time of Tracey's death, she was trying to turn her life around. She was trying to pick up the pieces. So she had quite a strong group of friends, and they were there to support her, to help her. Did you hear the noise that my throat just made? That was like something out of The Exorcist. Excuse me. They encouraged her to attend support meetings to try and help her get off of drugs. And it was becoming, she was spiralling up again. She's gone down. She's down now. She also had a support network in the flats, in the block of flats that she lived in. So she was still bringing clients back to her flat, and when she did, she would knock on the door. She had 2 neighbours, I think, that she could knock on the door of to let them know, and also to let her client know that other people knew. This is like that thing in Friends, like, did they know that she knows that I don't know? Anyway, so she would do that. She would knock on the door like that, and she would say, well, that was the code. They then knew that she had somebody in her apartment flat, and that they could, they were just aware of it, and it made the client aware. I've gone mad. I think I'm over explaining this. Made the client aware that people knew that she had somebody with her. It was an element of safety. Shut up, safe. Now, in November 1997, in the early hours of a Monday morning, Tracey would arrive back at her flat with a client, and this was in a blue Escort, I believe. After a while, the pair would emerge, and lots of what happened that morning was caught on CCTV, so there is quite a lot of footage, and you can see it on YouTube. So she is seen coming back out of her flat with the man and getting back into the blue Ford Escort. A Ford Escort, mini, 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 and a Ford Escort. Ferrari, mini, 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 and a Ford Escort. For fun. She is seen at around 3 a.m. leaving like a drug support place. She exchanged dirty needles for clean needles, and she got condoms and things like that, and she left there at about 3. And that's on CCTV as well. She's then seen walking back towards a blue car. It could be the same blue car, it might not be, they don't know. And then she is seen walking towards a place that's called The Drag. That just sounds so unappealing. Is that a nickname? Is it a real place? I don't know. I'm sure there isn't a real place called The Drag. Like, really? That's like calling something The Dive. At the same time that she is seen on CCTV walking towards the drag, there is a man in a beige jacket walking towards her. So they're like walking towards each other. And then I have watched the footage a few times because it's, you know when it's frustrating and you're like, I wish I could see this the whole way through, but it's only a clip. But from what I can gather, I think they meet and maybe have a conversation. I don't know. Or do they just appear into the CC? It's difficult to tell, and that would give you so much context to it. But what you can see is them almost like jostle. It kind of looks like the man in the beige jacket gets her and spins her round in like a sort of dance move, but it also looks quite a lot like someone, like, she doesn't want to be, she's being manhandled, basically. Like he's sort of come across her, like in a movie when someone's got a gun to someone's lower back, or, like that sort of thing. It's like that. Ooh, it's weird. I do have questions with this case. I do. Tracey's holding an umbrella, and then the beige jacket man and Tracey walk down the road, and he has her arm around her still. And again, it could look very like he's got a knife to her or a gun or something like that, but I'm not sure. We'll come to my questions later, but yeah. Sadly, that piece of CCTV footage is the last time that Tracey is seen alive. The next day, Tracey doesn't attend one of her support meetings, not like her. So then people are trying to find her. Friends are trying to find her, and nobody can get an answer at the flat. No one can get in. Somebody notices that they've got a balcony and that the door out onto her balcony is open. So they knock on the neighbour's door, the flat, because sometimes, with the balcony, there's just a little wall in the middle and you can climb over to the other one. That is far too scary for me. No, thank you. We do not play on balconies. I don't like balconies. I'm terrified of balconies. Anyhow, so neighbour climbs over, goes in through the open door. I always feel just so terrible for these people that just, they're just going about their day. And there we are. She walks into Tracey's bedroom and she finds Tracey's body. She's been covered with a dressing gown, but she is fully dressed underneath that. And she runs out, and she's traumatised, and she gets help. The police arrive, and it's determined from first impressions that she has been strangled because she does have bruising around her neck. And then the chaos ensues, as you can imagine, just a heavy police presence and tape and forensics and all of that. It's like, it must just be like living in CSI when something like that happens near you. Slowly but surely, her friends, her family, they're all quite local to each other, they all start to arrive. And again, that must just be like, you must just be hoping it's not your person. But for her family and her friends, it was. And sadly, because she had been struggling with drug addiction, a lot of her friends and family they thought that that's what had happened here, that she had taken an overdose or an accidental overdose. Quite quickly, it was determined by the autopsy that she had died from manual strangulation. So this news got passed around, and then there were so many interviews. There were a lot of people that knew Tracey. She also had like a client base, and they had to be talked to, and the people that lived in her flat, and it's a big old block of flats as well, like it is huge. I was like, whoa. So all of these interviews took place. They interviewed people in her flat and her block of flats, and people had heard that morning at about 4 a.m. an argument. And other than that, there was nothing to report. Also, interestingly, Tracey had her system where if she was with a client, she would knock on the door of one of her neighbours. And she had not done that evening. And then, only a day after Tracey's body had been discovered, another prostitute in the area was found murdered. So this just caused a big panic in the red light district community. Is that what you would say? I guess so. Because, well, you would be petrified, wouldn't you? And not only was it scary that Tracey had been murdered and then somebody else the following day, but for the last 6 years, a prostitute had been murdered every year consecutively for 6 years. So now they were up to 7. So to me, I was like, that is something out of Criminal Minds. Do you remember that? I was thinking, right, what date did they get? I wanted all this information, but no, don't get excited. Well, not that it's exciting, but you know what I mean. The other cases, or some of the other cases, were quite quickly, the person was found and prosecuted. So it was not like a Zodiac killer experience going on. One of the biggest leads that the police had was that whoever had murdered Tracey had locked the door behind them. That doesn't sound like a big lead, but they'd taken her keys, which were never found, never ever, and they'd locked the door. But her door was just, I think it was a heavy old door, and everyone would say that knew her, it was a certain knack. You had to have a knack to lock it. But this person, so people started to think, was it somebody that knew Tracey? And that was scary as well, because they were like, do we know them? Are we safe? Despite fingerprints and DNA being left at the scene, nothing was a match in any database, so whoever had committed this crime was not known in the criminal database. So whoever had killed her had not committed a crime in the past, or one that, they hadn't had their fingerprints taken or DNA and stuff like that. Frustrating. 2.5 years later, Crime Watch. Who remembers Crime Watch? Oh my God. I'm going to share a picture of the dude. Crime Watch. I used to love that. I watched that far too young, I'm pretty sure. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. Anyway, they covered her case, and they do reenactments and all sorts of things like that. It was quite the show. Why don't we do that anymore? I don't know. But I loved that. Oh, I also liked 999 Survivors, I think it was called. 999. It didn't say that. It just went dun 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 like that. That was the theme tune. Write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. And I loved that. Yeah. I forget what that isn't as clear in my memory, but Crime Watch, hell yeah. They released the CCTV footage. They released images, still images from the CCTV of the blue car. They do it all. They're like, right, could this be you? Could this be you? So they would, there was a man jogging nearby. Could this be you? Come forward. There was, the guy in the blue Escort. Could this be you? Come forward. But it's really tricky when it's sad, but with cases where it is a sex worker that has been murdered, because, by the nature of it, I suppose, like the clients don't want to come forward. So that's a whole pool of witnesses that you're just losing right there, because they're like, nope, they're not meant to be doing it, are they? They might have a wife, whatever. So it's frustrating. So when they're like, oh, could this be you in the blue, as if he's going to be like, oh, yes, that was me. Well, I guess some people might, but rare. These appeals often bring people out of the woodwork, sometimes successfully, sometimes no, and they are nut jobs. But out of the Crime Watch thing, I think it was 119 men were interviewed because of that. They were all cleared subsequently, but they did, they had these sort of leads. It's frustrating they didn't go anywhere, but they had the leads nonetheless. And somebody identified a gentleman from one of the images that was released. You know how grainy CCTV is though, man. Somebody identified him as, now please excuse me, I'm not going to get this right, Salgat, I think. I feel terrible when I can't say a name. His last name's harder. Makari, Salgat. Sorry if that is wrong. And because it's like salt in the wound when you hear what's happened. Spoiler alert, he is innocent. I'm telling you that now because you can feel how I felt when I was researching. So, unfortunately for him, his timing of when he left the UK was not great because he left shortly after Tracey's murder. So this guy has left the country. He's Indian. He's gone back to India. And somebody has fricking identified him as the man in the picture, this man of interest. The British police spoke to the police in India. He ended up being in prison for 3 weeks. He was put on the news as being a murderer and, like done deal, like on the news in India. It ruined his life. He lost his job. He lost the lease on his flat or his house because nobody, they didn't want a murderer living there. His children were bullied because people thought that their dad had killed somebody. He maintained his innocence. He was innocent. And he said he'd never even met her. And that is likely true. And he also voluntarily gave his DNA and fingerprints. But what happened there then? Because this went on for a long freaking time and they had DNA on her body. They had fingerprints. Were they not passed over from the Indian police? I don't know what happened there, but that is a massive miscarriage of justice because he was not exonerated of this for years. I believe that they did receive his DNA. This is speculation, just my opinion, and his fingerprints. And they were like, damn, annoying because it didn't match. But he wasn't officially it's not you. That's awful. The reason I believe that is the case is because they didn't extradite him back to the UK. They didn't feel that they had enough to bring him back, which obviously they freaking wouldn't if, his DNA wasn't a match. So I think they just were like, made a mistake there, but didn't rectify it. Very annoying. And then it wasn't until 2017 that anything happened. So it was reopened, but it basically was just still a very cold case. And this is where it gets spicy, my friends, because 2017, a local takeaway restaurant owner is arrested for assault. They take his DNA, fingerprints, pop them in. I hope there's a fun noise when it's like a match to a cold case. I can't think what I'd want it to be, but just something good because, something that's like, what? Maybe it should be that. What? This dude's fingerprints and DNA full on match to Tracey's body and her crime scene in 1997. We're now in 2017. Who is this man, you say? This man is 44-year-old Zhu Min Chen. I'm going to call him Chen. So many different, we've got Chinese names, Indian names, Scottish names. What a case. Now, he was born in China and he didn't come over to the UK until the mid-1990s. So he'd not been here long before he murdered Tracey. I don't know why that does anger me a lot because it's like, what? I don't believe his story either. Anyhow, he moved here illegally, I might add. So he was running. In my opinion, running. He says he was running from less than ideal circumstances in his country. But to me, it's like, well, what were they? I wonder, had you murdered somebody, perhaps? When he moved to the UK, went to Glasgow, he lived alone. He kept himself to himself. He was a loner. And as the story unravels, I just wonder if what we're seeing in the CCTV, do check it out, is Tracey being hunted, effectively. Did he see his prey and take his opportunity? I'm really not sure. After he murdered Tracey, he then went on to live a relatively normal life. He met somebody, they had 2 children, and then he bought and ran a successful takeaway business in the local area, 5 miles away from where Tracey lived. Just cracked on with life. Mad. On the 17th of May in 2019, he pleaded guilty. He was like, yeah, I did it. I killed her. Pleaded guilty. He said that when they got back to her flat, they argued and he just lost his temper. I mean, if that is the case, aren't we lucky that for 20 years that he didn't lose his temper? That's dangerous, isn't it? You lose your temper and strangle someone to death. Normal. So, yeah, you definitely are in the right place, Sonny Jim. I just can't help thinking there's more to it. Like, did he kill before in China? Is that why he was running away? Killed somebody, get out of there. Came here, couldn't help himself, does it again. But then I think, what makes somebody like that? Oh, meet someone, 2 kids. Was that the sort of like, that's the end of that life for me. I've got a wife and children now. I won't murder people. Maybe, stranger things have happened. Or did he kill more people? They do look into that, don't they? Like cold cases where the MO is similar, perhaps. But yeah, strange. These are some of the questions, as you can tell. And his story about that morning was corroborated really because a resident of the block of flats said that they heard the arguing at about 4 a.m, which is the time he said as well, and they couldn't make out what was being said, but they could hear an argument happening. Chen received a sentence of 20 years, a minimum of 20 years. And then in the October of 2019, he appealed that decision because he said that he was fearful. He feared for his life. That's why he never came forward. He thought that if he came forward and he was extradited to China, he would be killed. And that's why he didn't come forward. So that was what he said. Also, his lawyer said that Chen had no previous record. I mean, he was only here for a little while, love, give him a chance, but no, he had no previous record. So what they were saying was it was a hefty sentence for somebody without what do you call it? Criminal history, but what do I mean, like a rap sheet. And so because of that, his sentence was reduced from 20 years minimum to 16 years minimum. And this broke Tracey's family. They were upset already with the 20-year sentence because Tracey was 21 when she died. And this guy, there's many reasons, but, this guy that had just taken her life, he was free for 20 years of his life, for like his prime years of his life. God, anyone over 44 is going to be like, excuse you? But you know what I mean. So he was free and living his life as he wished for 20 years. So they thought it was a bit of a kick in the teeth that he then was given a 20-year sentence. So then to have that reduced even more to the 16, they are not happy about it. Oh, just popped into my head there though. If you're so terrified of what might happen to you if you are deported or extradited back to your home country, how about keep your hands to yourself? Sadly, Tracey's mum passed away 2 years before Chen was brought to justice, so she didn't see any of that happen. And get this is just something else. Do you remember Salgat, who was... What, excuse you? Why is it on? I apologise. He was wrongly accused of Tracey's murder. In 2018, all that time later, he happened to just stumble across an article in the news saying that somebody had been arrested for her murder. So no phone call from the police, no apology, just he found out by chance by reading the news. He didn't receive official news of his exoneration until 2019. That poor guy. I cannot help but think, what on earth would have happened here if Chen had not assaulted somebody and just, gone on with the rest of his life? Well, I don't need to question it. I know what would have happened. Nothing. So it would have been a cold case. It would never have been solved. You know, if he'd have not assaulted somebody and been arrested. And Salcat as well. Like, he would never have been exonerated. Sounds like that was just, he was just ignored because they were like, great, it's not him. Awful. I hope all of the people that live around him are like, you know, very, very nice to him. And someone, like, I don't know, buys him food and is very lovely to him all the time. That's what I hope. With these cases, I often think, why? You know, that's often a question that comes up, like, why? Oh, you know, such waste. But with this one, I am a bit perplexed as to why. And the whole, let me know what you think. What did they argue about? Did he not have any money? You know, he was obviously going back to her apartment for her services. So what happened there? Don't know. Was it always the plan to strangle her? And also, that's what I was going to say. You know, when I said, oh, it looks like he's squeaky wicky, looks like he's got a knife to her or something. It does in the video. You're like, oh my gosh, looks like she's not comfortable with this going on. Like, he's, you know, bribing her and it's like he's got something. But if he did, surely he would have used that weapon in the murder and not strangled her. And also that manner of manual strangulation is, you know, like, makes me think he didn't have a weapon. And that it was, you know, they argued and he, like, it was a bit of rage. But I don't know. There's so many questions. So many questions. Ultimately, just so tragic as well. 21 years old, turning her life around, and then this dude comes along. And that is all I have for you on today's case. Thank you for joining me. Sorry I missed you last week. Always hectic when the kids are going back to school, and I do find it quite stressful. We had car trouble on the weekend, which has stressed me out a lot more than it should, really. Well, it's ongoing and it's annoying. And on the weekend, rather than just be annoyed by that and, like, you know, a normal kind of level response to that stress, I did a spiral down, probably because it was in conjunction and ending a week of, like, high anxiety for me. So it didn't go well. Drank too much Friday, drank too much Saturday. It's like, no. So today I've picked myself up, and I'm spiralling up again. Ate some salmon and sprouts. Love Brussels sprouts. Oh, frick, I really do. They are not just for Christmas, tell you that now. What I have is a salmon fillet, some sprouts, about 8 Brussels sprouts, and then some new potatoes, maybe 6 new potatoes. Oh my God. Little bit of butter on the new potatoes, little bit. And then a little bit of light mayonnaise. Gorgeous. What a meal. I love that. People will be going, excuse you? But I do genuinely love it. Makes me feel like, yep, come on, got this. Spiral up. Yeah. Weekend of overindulgence as well, and I get all spots. It's just, yeah, you'll, like, my face tells me, like, hello. No. Didn't like it. Not at all. And had heartburn. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Did It Again of Sin and Tonic. Hope you can join me next week for a true crime story and a mug or a jug or a snug as a bug in a rug on a mug zebra cup gin. What? Anyway, thank you for everyone that joined me for a little toast for the Queenie. And I shall be doing the same Monday on her funeral, Monday the 19th, if you fancy. Raise a glass to the Queenie. I also did the same on September 11th, because that is also a day that I'll never ever forget. Look forward to speaking to you all in the comments. I love you all dearly, and I will see you all next week. Thank you and good night. Bye.